when it happened on Saturday, the drones and missiles were headed this way. If there is Israeli counterstrikes on Iran itself, it would be coming this way, 1,200 plus miles from the Israeli bases here into Iran. And there's some questions, right? Would the Israelis go over Jordan and Saudi Arabia and be granted overfly rights? Would they go over Iraq? What to do about the air defenses as they head in to Iran? Big part of the question here is how much of whatever Israel is going to do is to prove to Iran that Israel does not take orders from Joe Biden. For that, we bring in former UN ambassador, former national security advisor, John Bolton. For as much as the Biden administration does not want a strike by Israel, they certainly have a weird way of going about it, which is to effectively dare Israel to prove to the world that they don't take orders from Joe Biden.
Yeah. Look, it's reprehensible that the Biden administration would not support a retaliatory strike. And today they've been leaking all these indications that it'll be a very limited strike and so on. They're trying to psychologically get the Israelis not to do what, in fact, they need to do. I don't have any inside information what Israel's response is going to be, but it should come soon. As you say, it might be tonight. I don't think so, probably tomorrow or the next day. They shouldn't wait as long as Iran did after the attack on Quds Force leaders in Damascus on April the 1st. So it's coming soon. We don't know what it is. I think it ought to be a lot heavier than the administration wants to prove not just to Iran, but to Arab states in the region that think the United States under Joe Biden is weak and feckless, that Israel is their strong ally. I mean, you got to look ahead here. After this is over, they want the Gulf Arab states on their side. The Gulf Arab states want to be on their side. And one way to prove that Israel is reliable, even if Joe Biden and the Americans under him are not, is to have a very strong response here.
Interesting note, just this coming out from Barak Ravid at Axios. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. will impose new sanctions targeting Iran, its missile and drone programs, and new sanctions against entities supporting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and Defense Ministry. I guess the question would be, why weren't those already in place after October 7th?
Yeah. Listen, every time in my service in government we've imposed sanctions on a country, we always find out there are more sanctions you could impose. The way you do sanctions is massively, strictly enforced, no exceptions, to bring the adversary's economy to its knees. The Biden administration loosened up on the sanctions imposed after we got out of the nuclear deal. Iran's sales of oil internationally, and particularly to China, are back at the levels they were after the nuclear deal was in effect. I mean, it's the Biden administration that's allowed Iran over the past 3 years to earn the revenues that are now being spent on Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Shia militia groups in Iraq and Syria, on the ballistic missile programs and drone programs that struck Israel last night, on the Iran nuclear program. We should try to, the objective should be to bring Iran's economy to its knees.
Look, and to be fair, I know you had your own disagreements with Donald Trump, but he effectively did that, or at least brought the Iranian economy to the point that funding terror all around the world was more difficult. Here's just some of the comments from the former president when he was president.
One of the greatest security threats facing peace-loving nations today is the repressive regime in Iran. Our policy is based on a clear-eyed assessment of the Iranian dictatorship, its sponsorship of terrorism, and its continuing aggression in the Middle East. When I look at the Iran deal and how bad a deal it is for us, it's a one-sided transaction where we're giving back $150 billion to a terrorist state.
If Joe Biden talked like that, and the Israelis felt supported as they did during the Trump administration, wouldn't that be the way to get them to either not respond or respond in a way that could sort of end the back and forth blows?
Listen, I think it's a significant contributing factor to Iran's decision to launch at least 320 drones and missiles at Israel, that the Biden administration had been undercutting the Israeli government for weeks beforehand, trying to show division, trying to placate the left wing of the Democratic Party here at home. The way to deter Iran, at least to deter this regime in Iran, is to show solidarity with Israel, to agree that it has a right and really an obligation to its own citizens to respond to the Saturday night attack. The way you show a common front to an adversary like Iran is by being with your ally, not constantly carping at it and criticizing it.
Well said. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.